I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I used to think I had a decent life. I was married to a woman named Sarah for nearly 6 years. We met in college, and our relationship blossomed as we navigated the ups and downs of young adulthood together. She was smart, ambitious, and dedicated to her work as a mental health advocate. I admired her passion, but it seemed like lately, things had taken a turn. The first sign that something was wrong came about 6 months ago. Sarah had started coming home late from work more often, telling me she was caught up in projects or meetings. I respected her dedication, but it didn't take long for that feeling of unease to creep in. I'd get home from my job, have dinner alone, and then wait for her to come back, sometimes as late as midnight. I tried to brush off my worries. She was busy, that was all. But then I noticed other changes. She started distancing herself emotionally. The intimate conversations we used to have faded into mundane small talk. The spark that had once defined our relationship dimmed. And I felt like I was living with a stranger. I tried to initiate conversations about our relationship, but she always deflected, claiming that work was stressing her out and she needed space. Space. I didn't want to suffocate her, so I gave her that space, but it felt more like a chasm growing between us. Then one evening, while I was cleaning up the living room, I found her phone lying on the coffee table. She rarely left it unattended, so I was surprised. It buzzed repeatedly with notifications. I picked it up and saw a text from a guy named Mark, her colleague. "Can't wait to see you tonight, just us." My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but that text felt like a punch in the gut. I put the phone down, my mind racing. I told myself it could be innocent, but deep down I knew. I started noticing more signs. The way she was suddenly dressing up more for work, the new perfume that smelled different, and how she'd get defensive if I asked about her day. It felt like I was slowly piecing together a puzzle I never wanted to see. The following week, I decided to follow her after work, desperate to find the truth. I was a bundle of nerves, driving behind her car as she made her way to a small bar downtown. My heart raced as I parked a block away and watched her walk inside. I waited, packing back and forth, fighting the urge to call her, to confront her right then and there. Around an hour later, I gathered the courage to peek inside. And there they were, Sarah and Mark, sitting close together, laughing. My heart hurt like I'd been stabbed. I watched as she leaned in, brushing her hand against his arm, her body language screaming intimacy. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of my hiding spot, heart pounding, anger surging through me like wildfire. I confronted Sarah in the parking lot as she emerged from the bar, her face going pale as she saw me. I demanded to know what was going on. Her stammered excuses about just friends and needing support felt hollow. I could see the panic in her eyes, but there was no denying the betrayal. "What the hell, Sarah? You said you needed space. Was this the space you were talking about?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty lot. She started crying, but instead of the remorse I expected, there was defiance. "You don't understand. I'm overwhelmed. Mark is just. He's there for me." I felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath my feet. How could she make excuses for this? The anger bubbled up inside me, but there was also a deep sense of betrayal, disbelief, and heartbreak. "Just being there for you, that's what this is." I spat. "We've built a life together, and you're throwing it away for someone else." The confrontation spiraled into chaos, with her backpedaling, trying to justify her actions. But all I could feel was the painful truth crystallizing within me. I stood there, shaking, trying to process what was happening. I never thought I'd be one to succumb to the betrayal like this. As I walked away, leaving her standing by the car, tears streaming down her face, I realized this was more than just a moment of anger. It was the beginning of a journey I never wanted to take. I'd have to confront not only her actions, but also what it meant for us, for our future. The emotional weight of it all crashed down on me as I drove home, replaying every moment of our life together, wondering where it had gone wrong. I felt a mix of anger and sadness as I grappled with the reality of her infidelity and what it meant for me. I was about to embark on a path of healing, but first, I needed to confront the pain. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur. I went through the motions of life while my heart was in pieces. Sarah had left the house after our fight that night, saying she needed time to think. I didn't have a clue whether she was staying with Mark or a friend, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. My mind was a chaotic storm, filled with anger, betrayal, and confusion. I tried to focus on work, but I found it nearly impossible. My colleagues noticed my distraction. "You look like you've seen a ghost, man. Everything all right?" a friend asked. I forced a smile, shrugging it off. What was I supposed to say? "Oh, just found out my wife is cheating on me." I went home to an empty house every night, the silence amplifying my grief. I found myself staring at our wedding photos, memories of happier times, feeling sick to my stomach. I was angry at Sarah, but I was also angry at myself for being blindsided. I replayed every moment leading up to the discovery, trying to find the signs I missed. I had trusted her with my heart, and she had shattered it. One evening, as I was cleaning out the closet, I stumbled upon a small bag of her things, letters, keepsakes, and a few old photos from our early years. I felt a pang of nostalgia, but it quickly turned into bitterness. I picked up a letter she had written me for our third anniversary, filled with sweet words about love and commitment. It felt like a cruel joke now. That night, I decided to confront her again. I needed answers, a clearer understanding of what had happened. I called Sarah and asked if we could meet. I suggested a coffee shop nearby, the one we used to frequent during our early days. I hoped it would evoke some semblance of our past connection. When I arrived, I saw her sitting at a table, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. She looked different, more fragile maybe, but also defensive. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Jake, I didn't expect you to call," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, well, I didn't expect to find out my wife was cheating on me either," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "I just want to understand what's going on. What were you thinking?" Sarah looked down, her eyes filled with tears. "I was overwhelmed. You have no idea what it was like for me. Running around trying to help everyone else, and I felt so alone. Mark was just there, Jake. He listened to me when you didn't seem to care. It was as if she were trying to rewrite history. I didn't care. I was here for you. I tried to talk to you. You pushed me away." Her excuses started pouring out, how she felt neglected, how I had become increasingly absorbed in my work, how she had sought comfort in Mark. It felt like a poorly constructed narrative, one that only made me angrier. I had been there for her in every way I could, and she chose to betray that trust. "But did you ever think you could just talk to me about it?" I shot back. "Did you ever consider that maybe I was struggling too? You didn't have to do this." "Jake, I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I made a terrible mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened. Just happened." I echoed incredulously. "You don't just happen to cheat on your husband, Sarah. You made a choice." The confrontation escalated, with Sarah trying to defend her actions while I felt the weight of her betrayal sinking in deeper. Each word she spoke felt like a dagger twisting in my heart. I wanted to believe that she regretted her actions, but it felt like she was still trying to excuse them. Eventually, I gathered my thoughts, realizing that this wasn't leading anywhere productive. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and said, "I need to think. I can't just forgive you and pretend everything is okay." As I walked away, I felt a mix of relief and pain. The conversation hadn't brought the closure I hoped for, but I had at least gained clarity about the gravity of the situation. I realized I couldn't just keep pushing forward without a plan. In the days that followed, I tried to regain some semblance of normalcy in my life. I started to focus on self-care, taking walks, hitting the gym, and even talking to a close friend about what I was going through. It felt good to let some of the weight off my chest, to hear someone validate my feelings. I didn't want pity, I wanted understanding. Meanwhile, Sarah texted and called more frequently, expressing remorse and asking for another chance. But I was still processing everything. The emotional roller coaster I was on was exhausting. I felt sad, angry, confused, and then sometimes a flicker of hope that maybe we could find a way back to each other. But each time I thought about her betrayal, that flicker dimmed. I spent endless nights lying awake, replaying our history in my mind. I had to decide how to move forward, not just for her but for my own healing. I realized that healing takes honesty, both from myself and from Sarah. I needed to confront not just the betrayal, but also how I had contributed to the distance between us. I had to be honest about what I wanted and what I could accept moving forward. But first, I needed to gather my thoughts and emotions. I was about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and healing. With each passing day, the heaviness in my heart only seemed to grow. I was stuck in limbo, torn between the memories of the life Sarah and I had built and the reality of her betrayal. I found myself oscillating between anger and sadness, replaying our last conversation over and over. I needed clarity, but every time I thought I was getting closer to a solution, I'd get stuck again in the emotional muck. I finally decided to reach out to a therapist. It felt like a necessary step in unraveling the complicated mess of feelings swirling in my mind. I figured it would help me gain perspective on how to approach Sarah and our situation. The therapist was a middle-aged woman named Dr. Henderson who had a calming presence about her. As I recounted my story, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had spent so much time bottling everything inside that sharing it with someone who listened made it seem lighter somehow. "Jake, it sounds like you are in a process of grieving," Dr. Henderson said gently. "You're grieving not just the trust that was broken, but the future you envisioned with Sarah as well." Her words resonated deeply. I realized that the anger directed at Sarah was, in part, a response to my fear of losing everything we had built together. I had never considered my reaction in that light before, and it gave me a new perspective on how I needed to approach the next steps. After a few sessions, I felt more equipped to confront Sarah again. I was still angry, but I also understood that I had to communicate my feelings more effectively. I wanted to give us one last chance to talk through the issues head-on before making any rash decisions. I asked Sarah to meet me again, this time at the park where we had shared countless picnics and walks over the years. I hoped it would evoke happier memories and at the very least provide a neutral setting. When she arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. We exchanged awkward hellos and I could sense her anticipation and dread. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage to lay everything on the table. "Sarah, I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything that's happened." I began, my voice steady but soft. "I want to understand why this happened, but I also need to be real about how it has affected me." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes, and leaned forward, eager to speak. "I know I hurt you, Jake. I can't express how sorry I am. I was in a dark place and I made a terrible choice. I know that doesn't excuse what I did, but I want to make things right. Making it right isn't just about saying sorry. It's about understanding why you felt the need to go to someone else and how we can both heal from this." I replied. "What was it that made you feel like you couldn't come to me?" She hesitated, biting her lip as if searching for the right words. "I felt like I was drowning in my responsibilities and that you didn't see me anymore. I thought I was being strong, but I was struggling. Then Mark was there and it felt easy. He was someone who listened, who didn't judge me for my feelings." "Easy," I scoffed, feeling the anger rise again. "This isn't just about feelings, this is about trust and commitment. You chose to betray our vows. Did you ever think about what that would do to me?" "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't think. I thought I could handle it, that it was just a phase, but I couldn't, and it spiraled out of control." "You didn't think, that's the problem," I pressed, my voice firm. "You chose to hide things instead of coming to me. You betrayed the trust we built over years. I want to know if you're willing to work on this together, but it's going to take more than just words." "I am willing," she exclaimed, desperation in her voice. "I'll do whatever it takes. I just want us back, Jake. Then we need to be honest about everything. I need to know I can trust you again. I don't want any more secrets or lies," I said, feeling a surge of determination. We spent the next hour hashing out our feelings, the raw honesty of it both painful and liberating. I shared my fears of losing her, and she expressed her regret and desire to rebuild what we once had. It wasn't easy. We both cried and got angry, but ultimately, we were both committed to trying to make it work. As we talked, I realized that while forgiveness and rebuilding would take time, at least we were on the same page about wanting to heal. I started to see a small glimmer of hope, but I also knew that it would take real effort from both of us to mend the broken pieces. But that hope was quickly overshadowed by a looming feeling of dread. The reality was that Sarah's emotional affair with Mark was still a dark cloud hanging over us. I needed to be sure she was willing to cut ties completely and work towards true healing. I had learned in therapy that true wellness required honesty, not just between us but also within ourselves. Sarah, if we're going to work on this, you need to be honest with me about everything, including Mark. I can't build a future with you if you're still connected to him. I need to know you're serious, I said, my voice steady but filled with uncertainty. I'll end it, I promise, she replied, her eyes earnest. I watched her closely, searching her face for any sign of deceit. I need to hear that you mean it, Sarah. I need to know you're choosing me moving forward. And in that moment, I felt a flicker of hope again, overshadowed by the heavy burden of trust that would take time to rebuild. But this was a start, a step toward navigating a path that would define us going forward. As we walked out of the park, I felt an unfamiliar blend of fear and hope swirling inside me. Would we really be able to find our way back to each other? Only time would tell, but I knew that honesty would be the foundation of whatever came next. In the days following our heart-to-heart at the park, a cautious optimism began to settle over our relationship. Sarah assured me repeatedly that she was done with Mark, but the lingering doubts in my mind made it hard to fully trust her again. I wanted to believe her, but I kept replaying every moment of betrayal, and it was tough to shake off the heavy weight of doubt. We agreed to attend couples therapy together, hoping it would provide a safe space for both of us to unpack our feelings and rebuild our communication. Therapist Dr. Henderson had been a good fit for me individually, and I hoped she would be just as effective in helping us navigate this tumultuous period. In our first session together, Sarah looked nervous but determined. I could sense her apprehension, and I shared in it. Dr. Henderson opened the session with a gentle prompt. Let's start by discussing the promise you made to each other about honesty and healing. What does that look like for you? I took a deep breath, glancing at Sarah. For me, it means being transparent about everything, our feelings, our struggles, and our past mistakes. I need to know that we can talk openly without fear of judgment or defensiveness. Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I want that too. I realized how much I was hiding from you, thinking I could deal with everything alone. I don't want to do that anymore. Dr. Henderson encouraged us to share our feelings, and slowly, we opened up about our fears. I expressed my worry that Sarah would fall back into her old habits, while she shared her fear of not being able to regain my trust. It felt good to finally have an outlet for everything we had been bottling up. As the weeks passed, we made small but significant progress. We learned to communicate more effectively, and I started to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, a woman who was willing to confront her mistakes and take responsibility for her actions. But there were still moments of tension, especially when either of us brought up the past. I couldn't help but feel the weight of her affair looming over us, a shadow that refused to fade. There was one particular night when everything came to a head. I had planned a special dinner to celebrate our progress. I cooked her favorite meal and even set up candles on the dining table, hoping to create an intimate atmosphere that reminded us of our early days together. But as I was plating the food, I saw the notifications on her phone light up across the room. My heart dropped as I caught a glimpse of a message from Mark. Are you free to talk? I miss you. The world around me blurred as rage and betrayal surged through my veins. I felt like I was back at square one, all the progress we had made crumbling in an instant. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, but I was seething inside. Sarah, I shouted, my voice cutting through the air. She rushed into the dining room, her face a mix of surprise and concern. What's wrong? That's what's wrong. I pointed to her phone, speaking through clenched teeth. You said you were done with him, you promised. Panic flashed across her face as she grabbed the phone, frantically trying to explain. Jake, it's not what you think, I swear. I haven't talked to him since we started therapy. I was going to block him. I didn't know he would message me. Didn't know? You didn't think to tell me. How can I believe anything you say? I felt a surge of adrenaline as anger swirled in my chest. Please just let me explain, she pleaded. I'll block him right now. I just didn't want to cause drama. I thought ignoring him would be enough, but I see now how stupid that was. The dinner I had prepared turned cold and the romantic ambience shattered into pieces. I felt like I was battling two wars at once, one with my anger and the other with the love I still had for Sarah. I thought we were working on being honest, I said, my voice shaking. How can I trust you if this keeps happening? This is the second time. I know, and I'm so sorry I messed up, but I want to fix this. She was crying now, her makeup smudging down her cheeks. As I watched her break down, my heart softened slightly, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I can't keep doing this, Sarah. I need to know you're choosing me. And that this isn't just talk. I am choosing you. I don't want him, I want us. She shouted, desperation spilling out with her tears. After a tense silence, I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my emotions. Then show me that you're serious about us. In that moment, I realized that I had two choices. I could either walk away, allowing the betrayal to overshadow any hope for our future, or I could fight for it, demanding the honesty and openness I needed to heal. With that thought, I made a decision. Let's talk about boundaries. What would you do to make me feel secure in this relationship again? She nodded, wiping her tears, her expression shifting from despair to determination. I'll block him right now, and I won't respond to any messages. I'll also keep my phone open. You can check it whenever you want. I want to be completely transparent about everything. I felt a flicker of hope as I considered her proposal. And I want us to check in with each other regularly. We can set a date each week to discuss our feelings, our fears, and our progress. Absolutely, she replied, her voice steadier now. I want that too. We spent the rest of the evening discussing what we needed from each other, outlining clear boundaries that would help rebuild trust. It was hard and there were still moments of tension, but it felt like we were finally taking steps toward healing, not just for ourselves, but for our relationship. As I lay in bed that night, my heart was still heavy, but for the first time in a while, I felt like we were on a path toward rebuilding. I was reminded that true healing wasn't just about moving forward. It was about facing the past, being open about our struggles, and choosing to work together despite the odds. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The weeks turned into months, and while the journey to healing was far from linear, there was a sense of progress that I hadn't felt before. We continued our couples therapy sessions with Dr. Henderson, and each time we left her office, I felt a little lighter. Sarah was making genuine efforts to regain my trust, and I could see her determination to make this work. It was a challenging process, filled with ups and downs, but we were both committed. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood to clear our heads. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. We talked about our plans for the future, things we wanted to do together, places we'd like to visit, dreams we had for our lives. It felt good to share those moments, to reconnect on a deeper level without the shadow of betrayal looming over us. However, the reality was that the past still lingered like a ghost, often rearing its head just when I thought we were making solid progress. One night, I noticed Sarah had received a text message from Mark while we were watching TV together. My gut tightened as I saw his name flash across her screen. She immediately picked up her phone and moved out of my line of sight, which sent alarm bells ringing in my mind. Who was that? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. It was just a work message, I swear, she said, her eyes wide with panic. I'll block him right now. Why didn't you tell me he was still messaging you? You promised to be open about everything, I shot back, feeling a familiar wave of dread wash over me. Jake, please, I was going to tell you. I didn't want to upset you, she pleaded, her voice trembling. Upset me? You think hiding this is going to help? You don't get to decide what I can handle. I felt the frustration boiling over. How can I trust you if you keep letting him into your life? I'm trying, I really am. I'll end it right now, she exclaimed, her desperation evident. I took a deep breath, trying to control my rising anger. I need to see you take action. I can't keep doing this if there are still loose ends. I need to know this is over for good. She nodded, clearly shaken. I will. I promise. As she stepped away to handle the situation, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. This was supposed to be a moment of connection, yet here we were, dragged back into the chaos of betrayal. I wanted to believe Sarah was sincere, but the doubt was a heavy weight that I couldn't fully shake off. Later that night, after Sarah had dealt with Mark's messages, we sat down to talk. I wanted to give her the chance to explain herself, but I was also terrified that we were slipping backward. The conversation was tense, filled with raw emotion as we spoke about the trust issues and fears we both had. "Jake, I know I messed up. I don't want to keep hurting you," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm trying to prove to you that I'm committed to making this work. I don't want to lose you. I want to believe you, but it's hard when I see him reaching out to you," I replied, the hurt evident in my voice. "Every time this happens, it feels like a reminder of the betrayal. I don't want to live in the past, but it keeps creeping in. I understand, and I'm sorry for putting you through this. I didn't want to hurt you again. I thought I could handle it myself," she said, tears streaming down her face. I realized this was a turning point for us, a moment where we could either move forward or get stuck in the same patterns of hurt. It was essential that we both took responsibility for our parts in the situation. "Sarah, if we're going to make this work, I need to be honest too. I'm struggling with trust," I admitted. "Every time I see his name or hear you mention him, it sends me spiraling. I need reassurance that I'm your priority." "I'll do anything," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "I want you to feel safe with me again. I'll cut all ties with Mark and make sure you have peace of mind. I'll even write it down if it helps." We spent hours discussing what we needed from each other to rebuild that trust. I appreciated her willingness to be open and vulnerable, and it reminded me of why I fell in love with her in the first place. Despite the hurt and betrayal, I could see the real Sarah, the woman who wanted to be better, who wanted us to work. As we talked, I also realized that healing would require me to work on my own insecurities and fears. I needed to learn how to communicate those feelings without letting them turn into resentment or anger. It was a learning process for both of us, but as the night wore on, it felt like we were starting to lay the groundwork for a more honest relationship. In the days that followed, I noticed Sarah's efforts to distance herself from Mark became more apparent. She blocked his number and even deleted him from her social media. I could see she was genuinely committed to moving forward, but the echoes of the past still lingered in my mind. One weekend, we decided to take a trip to a cabin in the woods. Hopping the change of scenery would help us reconnect without outside distractions. The drive was filled with laughter and light-hearted banter, reminding me of the good times we had shared before everything fell apart. When we arrived at the cabin, we spent the evening cooking together, the aroma of our favorite dishes filling the air. As we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a momentary escape from the chaos of our lives. But just as I thought we were getting back on track, Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from a group chat, and the name that popped up made my heart drop: Mark. I couldn't help but feel that familiar surge of anger and fear bubbling to the surface. "Seriously," I said, my voice edged with frustration. "You're still in contact with him?" "No, it's just a group chat. I haven't talked to him," she said quickly, but I could see the fear in her eyes. In that moment, instead of reacting with anger, I took a deep breath and chose to approach the situation differently. "All right, let's talk about what's happening. Can we set some boundaries around this? I need to feel safe that he's not part of our lives." "I understand, and I'll leave the group chat if it bothers you," she said, her voice steady. "I want you to feel comfortable, Jake. I'm here for you." As we talked, I realized that while the road ahead would still be challenging, we were learning to communicate more effectively. The trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight, but we were both committed to the process. It was messy, painful, and sometimes felt impossible, but I had to believe that we could find our way back to each other, one step at a time. And as I watched her smile under the setting sun, I felt that familiar flicker of hope. Maybe we could rise from this stronger than before, but it would take dedication, honesty, and a willingness to face the past together. Only time would tell if we could truly heal. As the days turned into weeks and our cabin trip began to feel like a distant memory, I found myself reflecting on the strides we had made as a couple. It wasn't easy. Every day was a test of our commitment to each other and our willingness to confront the past. But despite the challenges, I could feel the relationship shifting, slowly but surely. The foundation we were building was strong, filled with honesty, communication, and a newfound sense of understanding. We continued our therapy sessions with Dr. Henderson, and those sessions became a safe haven for us to explore our feelings. The sessions helped me voice my insecurities, while Sarah learned to articulate her struggles with vulnerability. We were both eager to address the roots of our problems, seeking to understand not just the infidelity, but the underlying issues that had led us there. One session, as we sat on the familiar couch, I shared my fears. I know I still have lingering doubts about us, especially when it comes to Mark. I can't help but feel like I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. How do we truly move forward from here? Dr. Henderson nodded thoughtfully. It's natural to have those feelings, Jake. Healing is a process, and it's essential to give yourself grace as you navigate through it. The key is to keep communicating with each other, to express your fears openly without letting them fester. Yeah, I guess I've been holding on to a lot of anger, I admitted. I don't want to keep punishing Sarah for her mistakes, but I can't ignore how deeply I was hurt. Sarah reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. I understand, and I do. Expect you to just forget what happened. I'm working hard to be better for us, to prove that I can be trustworthy again. I want you to see that I'm fully committed to this. As we continued to work through our feelings, I started to notice a shift in the way we interacted. The tension that once thickened the air was slowly dissipating, replaced by moments of tenderness and laughter. We began to rediscover the joy in each other's company, even if the journey was still fraught with uncertainty. One day, I found myself reminiscing about our early relationship, how we used to dance in the living room, sing along to our favorite songs, and make spontaneous plans. Inspired by those memories, I decided to plan a surprise date for Sarah. I wanted to reconnect with the parts of our relationship that had faded over the years. I arranged a picnic in the park where we had spent countless afternoons, packing her favorite snacks and a bottle of wine. As we sat on the blanket, the sun setting over the horizon, I felt a warmth spread through me. This was the Sarah I remembered, the one who laughed freely and smiled brightly. It reminded me that despite everything we had been through, there was still love between us. "Jake, this is so thoughtful," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I can't believe you remembered all my favorites." "I remember everything about you," I replied, my heart swelling. "And I want to keep creating new memories together, no matter how challenging things get." As we talked and laughed, I felt the barriers between us begin to crumble. I realized that while the scars of betrayal would always be part of our story, they didn't have to define us. What mattered was how we chose to move forward, how we committed to growing together. Over the next few months, we continued our therapy sessions, but now they felt more like a reinforcement of our bond rather than a necessity to patch up a broken relationship. We worked on building trust and ensuring that our lines of communication remained open. I started to feel more secure in our relationship, and I could sense that Sarah was genuinely doing the same. We celebrated small milestones together, such as her completing a challenging project at work and my promotion at the office. We learned to lean on each other again, to celebrate our victories as a team, and to support each other through the tough days. As the anniversary of Sarah's infidelity approached, I felt a familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. I was nervous about the weight of that date and what it represented. The memories of betrayal crept in, but this time I was determined to confront them head-on. We had agreed to acknowledge the date rather than ignore it, to talk about how far we had come, and to reflect on what we had learned. On that day, we set aside time to sit together, holding hands and sharing our feelings. "I know this day carries a lot of weight," I began, my voice steady, "but I want to focus on how we've grown since then. Yes, we faced something terrible, but we also chose to fight for our love." "I couldn't agree more," Sarah said, her eyes glistening. "I'm so grateful for the work we've done to rebuild our trust. I've learned so much about myself and about us throughout this process. I want to keep moving forward together. As we reflected on our journey, I realized that while we would never forget the pain, we had also learned resilience, empathy, and the importance of vulnerability. The scars would remain, but they would serve as a reminder of how far we had come and the strength we had discovered in each other. Through this experience, I learned that true healing required honesty, not just between us, but with ourselves. It was about acknowledging the mistakes, feeling the pain, and choosing to embrace love despite the hurt. We had forged a new path, one filled with hope and commitment. That night as we lay in bed, I turned to Sarah and whispered, "I love you. I know this journey isn't over, but I'm proud of us." "I love you too, Jake," she replied, her voice a soothing balm, "and I'm committed to making this work for us." In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We had faced the worst together and come out stronger. As we drifted off to sleep, I held her close, grateful for the journey we had taken and excited for all the moments still to come. We were still a work in progress, but we were a work worth fighting for.